Endurance Athlete Journey podcast. This is the place where you get both a coach's and sports dietitian perspective on topics important to endurance sports, including nutrition, training, and how these impact and fit into your daily life both on and off the race course. Your host, Coach Justin, certified run and triathlon coach and owner of Tabula Rasa Racing, along with Coach Katie, a registered dietitian with a specialty in sports nutrition and owner of Fuel to Run. Here at the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast is where your journey begins. Welcome to the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast. I'm your host, Coach Justin. I'm here with Coach Katie. Today, we are talking about, does speed have a seat at the table, at the endurance training table? I had that all polished up by the time I hit record and then brain fart. But anyway, so today we're going to be talking about how does speed play a role in your endurance training? Is there a role for it if you're a long course athlete, whether that be a marathoner or a Ironman? So let's just jump right in.
Yeah, let's jump in. Well, I can talk a little bit more about
why I
chose
I'm going to
this
turn this over to Katie. She's going to take the role. Katie, take it over.
Yeah, I think this was my idea because these coaches' quarters are kind of more about what we're struggling with or what our athletes that we work with are struggling with, but not that anything we're struggling with either. I don't think this is exactly at all what this topic is, or just like things we're coming across or things we're, are doing ourselves that we just want to talk about. So for me, I think I'd mentioned, or we had talked about my struggles after my marathon of just kind of getting back to it. And it's reasonable. I mean, that I did 3 marathons in like 10 months, it was really like I started training for the marathon about August or end of July, August last year. And then I finished my marathon the end of May. So it was a good almost 10 months. And I did 3 marathons, which is a lot. And I was training specifically for that. And I think part of my issue is I was just kind of burned out of the grind of it. And so my body was also a little bit tired, kind of like I need something different. And so I have switched over to doing a lot more speed work. And I'm really loving it. Like, it's been fantastic. So basically what I mean by that is like I've been training for a mile race, distance 5K. I did a 5K early July, but then I've really been focusing on the mile. So I did a mile track workout or track race, maybe mid-July, and then recently, just a couple weeks ago or about a week ago, I did like a road race, and that was a local one. So, and I did it, and it was like surprisingly fast. Like I felt pretty good. I was surprised with my time, especially because I didn't actually sleep that good the few nights before, which seems to be a trend for me. But maybe a separate topic. But so I've just been really focusing on this, and I've been enjoying it. And I think a lot of people might be like thinking, well, why would you do that? Or, I've had people ask me like, why would you train for speed when your goal has been the marathon, or maybe, I'm kind of talking about doing another marathon. So that's really what I wanted to talk about a little bit today, is kind of why I think, and some of maybe the research and just the perspective of like why speed work can be so beneficial for not only just the marathon, but like why would that even be beneficial for like a long distance triathlon, like an Ironman or half Ironman? Why would somebody want to take the time to take a little break from that to train for speed? And so, yeah, that's kind of where the topic came for me, So any thoughts or things you want to add in there? I know that this was kind of selfishly my topic, but any thoughts, Justin?
No, I think it plays a significant role in the endurance athlete training plan. As I say, that there's always a time and place for everything. So whether you want to do some strength training or speed work or functional strength training within your plan, there's always a time where you can insert those types of focuses. And I think it's valuable to where, especially there's this misconception for long course triathlon is that the most of your stuff should be this slow kind of like, consistent, kind of like this zone 2 methodology. However, I think that there's a time and place for that. However, the bulk of your training, I don't believe, should be that type of focus. I think that there is benefit to phases where you work on strength, and whether that's, resistance-based strength or that's functional strength in terms of like, running hills or doing big gear work in the bike, or, swimming with paddles in order to increase upper body strength, because all those things kind of weave into it, especially if you find yourself doing a hilly course or you find yourself doing a race where you're wearing a wetsuit. It is going to require more upper body strength. So speed work is definitely a beneficial component of the overall plan. The only caveat that I would put on this is the track Tuesday mentality, especially for triathletes. I think that doing it too often or doing it that consistently, there's going to be diminishing returns, I think, to that kind of investment.
Yeah, I think
A
so.
If you have the ability to manage that load, because it's a significant
Yeah,
increase
and
in
yeah, we
stress to
need
the
to
body.
talk about the
And one of the
downsides
things that
here.
I like to do with my athletes is I rarely put them on a track, but I will build speed work into like a normal workout, because I think that when you get on a track, I don't know if it's just the athlete itself or it's just, how they perceive the structure of the workout, but their stride length really lengthens, the cadence will increase really high. And so I think that there's such a dichotomy of stride on the track versus the stride that we're going to use in the race. So, I'm kind of torn, because
Right,
I know
yeah.
that there's benefit to it, but I know that there's also significant costs that
Yeah, I think
that come
that
with it.
I think
So
you
you
list a
have to weigh
couple
those.
points. I think first of all, like if you're it's speed work, I think it's one of those things that, in my for me, like I've been yeah, that's a really good point. Is like for me, I've been an athlete. I've been doing this for so long and I've done speed work on and off for so long. Like there's always a risk because you're putting such demands on your body if you go to the track and you do like those fast-paced workouts. And if you're not used to that, it can definitely increase your risk for injury because your your like your stride length may increase, like your mechanics change a little bit when you're on the track or you're doing speed work. There's more force, going through your legs to be able to be fast. So there's a few things that I think you bring up that I just want to kind of say. Like if you're focusing specifically on speed work, like I am right now, it's not like every day or maybe once a week I'm doing something that's a bit quicker. But I don't go like I think for endurance athletes we tend to think like more is better and like you got to go, you know, like I'm used to doing I think one of my workouts when I was doing my marathon was like 24 times 400 with like a 30-second, 45-second rest. It's like, but those 400s were speedier, but they were like 10K pace, right? It wasn't, but that I'm talking about speed, I'm talking like mile pace, 5K pace, 5K pace or faster. But that was a lot of volume. But when you're doing speed work, in my opinion, like you just can't do so many reps. Like, so for me, when I was doing some 400s the other day on the track, I did like 400s at mile pace or faster and then like 4 200s. That was all I did. It wasn't 24 of them,
Right.
because I was going I was going fast, right? And so you have to also think about it that way because I think endurance athletes have this tendency to be like, oh well, I know when I was doing these like, maybe more endurance based workouts or it's speed work in the sense of like maybe half marathon pace or faster to maybe 10K pace, you can do more. But as soon as you're starting to do these really fast workouts, like you don't want to add too much volume because that's where the injury risk starts to happen. So you can maybe push once a week at the track, but don't be looking at everyone else doing their, endurance based speed work stuff. That's like maybe like 800s times 6 or whatever it is that's more volume based at a slightly lower pace and be like, oh, well, I'm gonna do this really fast stuff but I'm gonna do a bunch of it because I think that's where the risk of injury happens. But I think that's important to mention. And I also think it's important that speed work can be different things. I think a big thing that maybe a lot of athletes would benefit from would be just doing short strides where you're really working on the speed, but it's a stride. So it's not taking so much out of your body. You're not demanding so much. Like to do a 400-meter workout or even 200s all out is a lot. But if you can do like a 20-second stride times six or something like that, that's speed work. You're
Hmm.
working on building up some speed. So, something I do even outside of this where I'm really focusing on speed right now, but I only do that speed workout once a week where I really focus on speed. The rest is all kind of like my normal stuff. So that's one thing. You're not going to the track every day and doing speed, but on top of that, I do strides and I do hill sprints. And so it's just kind of, but those are short and fast and short and not so much of a demand on my body. And I incorporate those hill sprints in those sprints, those little short, like sprint strides all throughout my marathon training just to keep the speed going. So I can just still be incorporating some of that speed without so much stress on my body. So I think that's what people need to be really careful about because I know endurance athletes
Hmm.
and we are a group that wants to overachieve. And so
Yeah.
that's where people I think get into trouble because they go to that track and they're like, "Hey, I'm gonna like pound out a whole bunch of it's as fast as I can go. Let me try to do 20." It's like, no, 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 no. That is not a good idea because first of all, you're not going to be able to maintain that speed for all 20. You're going to, because you're trying to go pretty quick. And second of all, as soon as you get to a certain amount, like your body is starting to break down. You're really putting yourself at risk for injury. So it's really just remembering it's short, it's fast. Think of the sprinters also. You want to give yourself extra recovery. This isn't one of those things you're like, oh, I'm going to do this and then I'm going to pound out another one 20 seconds later. It's like, think of like sprinters when they're training for their races. If you've ever been by the track and you watch them, they do their thing, their practice, and then they take lots and lots of time in between. They're just relaxing, they're jogging. There's like a ton of time, and then they'll do like another 200 or whatever they're training for. Like they'll do different stuff, but like there's a lot of time in between that they're just like resting, letting their body kind of their heart rate come back down, and then they'll do another one. So it's not like versus the endurance athletes, they're out there just like pounding out around the circle or on the track over and over again. They're not really slowing down. They're not taking a lot of rest. So it's the mentality you have to almost think when you're training for speed faster, like less repetitions, I guess, and less and more recovery in between. Otherwise, I do think you're really setting yourself up for an injury. So, sorry, I know I kind of went on about that, but I think you have a really good point. I just wanted to kind of bring that up, because that's, I think, where people get into trouble the most. I don't know if you have thoughts.
Yeah. No, no, that was extremely valid. I mean, one of the things I've noticed just in my own training. Now, this is just me personally. This isn't like for an athlete that I would work with or something, but I know that personally I don't handle speed work very well when it comes to running. I know that when I start to inject intervals into my training plan. So, all right, so let's define what an interval workout is.
Right. Yeah,
So,
because
an
it
interval workout
Mhm.
is a workout where you go a particular prescribed distance, and then there is a prescribed recovery period between those efforts. And that recovery period is an absolute recovery. This isn't like a jogging recovery or you go to like a zone 2 effort. It's almost like you do the effort and then you basically can just start walking, and you're bringing the heart rate down, you're deloading the muscles so that you can go back to it with proper form. So one of the things that endurance athletes tend to do is that they will cheat the recovery. So they're like, I'm going to do this interval workout and I'm going all out, but on the rest period, they're still going at a zone 2 effort. Well, that's really not an interval based workout. That's kind of just like a fartlek, kind of like
Mhm.
speed play workout. So I know that for me, I don't do intervals because there's too much risk involved with it because my body just doesn't absorb it, doesn't handle it. I've done it before and saw significant increases in my overall speed and time for races, so I know that it's beneficial. But my concern is that even though I know it's beneficial, I have a hard time recovering from it. And I would much rather just say, okay, I'm willing to sacrifice that speed if it means that I can be consistent.
Yeah, but I think intervals could be the problem is we're talking about intervals. It's like there's such a broad, like, for instance, today I did 3 times 10 minutes at like a threshold pace. So it's kind of like intervals, but it's not. It's such a, like, I don't, like, so I have like a few minutes in between that I was jogging very light, because for me when I do intervals it's a little different. Like, I'll go to maybe zone 1. I don't ever stop. I don't usually stop. I might
Mm,
walk and I might really jog very slowly. I mean, it's probably like zone 1, but that's just the way I work better because I stop. It's really hard for me to get going again. So I just kind of jog really easy. But usually I'm watching my heart rate and I'm making sure it's recovering back to at least like below zone 2 or below before I like, or sort of that range, or I watch the recovery piece of my heart rate. So I might be looking at my heart rate, making sure that I'm ready to go for the next one. It depends on the workout too, what I'm trying to accomplish. But, like interval, and it's also the pace. Like, so I think a lot of people think of intervals are thinking of what I'm talking about, of that speed on the track where you're just going all out. And that can be intervals, but so can like what I was talking about, like the 24 by 400 at 10K pace, which isn't really that challenging. For some people it might be, but for me, it isn't, because I'm used to running 10Ks and things like that, and it's not the fastest I can go. So, and then I am jogging in between, and there's a very specific reason for that workout, but it's still sort of like an interval workout. So I suppose that's where it could kind of get tricky, is like, what exactly do we mean by intervals? And I think when we're talking in this case, it's like the speed intervals, like where you are doing all out, like you're, like 200, where you maybe do actually want to take that rest in between. You might be walking, you might be stopping, because your goal for that workout is to get the most out of that 200, to go as fast as you can, or like maybe faster than 1 mile pace. Like, you're going really fast. And because there's so much demand of that, you need to, like, that is where you really do want to fully recover before you go on to the next one. And so that type of interval, I think, is kind of what you're describing, is like those really intense, really fast intervals. Because I'm assuming you do zone 3, like some variation where you're doing a certain number of minutes in the higher zone and then coming
mhm.
back down. And then that's also, I think, my definition of that is also interval training, but it's just a different type of like, so defining exactly what we mean here, I think, is helpful. Like, I think exactly what we mean is that sort of workout where you are going all out pretty hard and you're needing that full recovery, where you don't want to be jogging. You actually want to, or you want to jog like zone 1, if anything, or walk, but you don't want to be like, yeah, just doing your 200 and then jogging like a zone 2, and then trying to do another one, because you're not allowing yourself enough rest. I think that's what we're talking about. Is that what we're talking about when I just want to make sure we're on the same page.
Yeah, I mean, the way that I've always kind of interpreted it, and when I went through my run coach certification, they made this distinction between,
Okay.
what are interval workouts, and then what are kind of like fartlek style
Oh, interesting.
runs. And the fartlek can be like a structured versus an unstructured fartlek, but the interval had a very specific definition where it was a period of effort with a prescribed period of walking or complete rest,
Hmm,
where there was
interesting.
you either stood around or you just kind of like walked it off a little bit. That was kind of how they described it. And so
Okay.
that's kind of how I've adapted it. I've adopted it into, my coaching philosophy and methodology, is that if I give an athlete intervals, that's what I'm talking about.
You're
So
saying
it's like,
intervals, you're resting. Okay, that makes
yeah,
sense.
so it's like you go and you do, whether it's a time based or it's a distance based interval, on the rest period, it's an absolute rest. So we're talking just stand there or just walk it off and kind of get your breath down. If I will throw in plans, I'll say we're going to do this is a structured fartlek,
Mhm.
which is going to be a prescribed period where it's a higher intensity, either zone 3 or zone 4 progressions. And then the rest period is the zone 2 effort, to where
Mhm.
you're still running or jogging, but it's more kind of just, just opening up the stride a little bit, which is what I'm looking for. But I'm not looking for that over exaggerated stride, which you'll find on in track workouts typically for those types of interval
Hmm,
runs.
that makes
That's the way
sense.
that that's the
Okay.
way that I
That would
implement it.
make sense, because
And
I
what
mean,
I
I do
yeah,
structure fartlek type
yes,
workouts, but, like, I also have, like, interval like, very specific intervals with a recovery session where it is, like, very low, but usually it's only the specific speed where it's like, these people are going all out, like, I want you to
right.
just push it, then you're taking a complete rest where you're either going very, very walking it out or you're jogging at, like, a 12-minute 15-minute, you know what I mean? Like, it's not a very fast jog, or you're just completely rested. So it's just a different, yeah, defining it differently, and it's interesting because I think it's just the way I've always, as I've gone through all these years, is kind of the way, even as college coaches, like, I'm trying to think back to when I was in college, like, how they defined our different workouts. And yeah, I suppose, like, interval, maybe there isn't, like, I almost wonder now. It's like if we looked it up, like,
Yeah.
how would other people define that? Is it like more along with what you're saying and the name of it? Because fart, like, for me was always like, okay, we're gonna do a fartlek. I remember being in middle school and then being like, "We're gonna do a fartlek," which I always thought was a funny word, so I'd laugh. And then he would have like one of those starting, like, not a gun, but like a horn, like an air horn, and
Yeah.
he'd be on his bike, and if the air horn sounded, we had to go fast, and then when it sounded, we'd have to go slow, but we didn't know. We never knew how long that interval was gonna be. Like, he would set it that way, so it was like a surprise. And
Yeah.
I always think of it that, so sometimes I'll do something with my athletes, or yeah, I'll set it, but it'd be a specifically kind of like a fartlek, and it's sort of like an interval because you have to kind of set some parameters to it because I can't be out there with them all the time with an air horn or something like that. But it's
Yeah.
like, but then when I'm thinking of intervals, it is usually something that's a little bit faster, but my definition isn't necessarily like that complete rest either. It's like just taking it at a
Uh-huh.
certain level of easy depending on the pace. So it's just interesting how it's, yeah, like I think it's really good we're clarifying this because it's,
Yeah, I mean, like one of my favorite structures for a fartlek is what I call the 3-2-1.
oh yeah.
And it's, the 3 minutes at zone
Oh, well,
3,
this is different than what
2 minutes at zone 4, and then 1 minute at zone 1 to 2. And so and you just repeat that pattern. And you start with an established warm up period, then you kind of do a zone 2 period, and then you get into the structured fartlek where you do the 3 minutes, 2 minutes, and then 1 minute, and then you go back into a zone 2 block and then a cool down. So
Mhm.
that's one of my favorite sessions that I like to do personally, and what I give some of my athletes.
It's funny because I
Uh,
was thinking like so in college we did 3-2-1, but it wasn't that. It was on the track. It was 300, then we'd have like 100 or 200-meter rest, 200, and then 100 or 200, and then 100.
yeah.
So I'm thinking that, this is again totally different definition of what we're thinking.
So
Anyway.
yeah, I mean, for me, what I typically will do is I'll focus my speed work on in the pool or on the bike because I know it's safer for me personally since I know that my body doesn't really absorb speed
Mhm.
work on the run. But I do ultimately gain benefits on the run from the speed in the other two disciplines as well.
Yeah. And I think your fartlek workouts are still kind of like like
Yeah,
you're not doing this. There's
there's
like an
a
element there, right? Of like
right.
you're
There
picking up your
there are
pace. So.
times where, I do what I call it really like pace work.
Mhm.
I don't typically like to call things speed work because if I'm talking to an athlete and I was like, we're going to do speed work, to me that's a connotation of like, okay,
It's gonna be
this is
really
like all out
Mhm.
efforts. But if I tell them I was like, we're doing pace work, then I think it's a little bit easier to communicate. I was like, this is the kind of effort that we're doing. We're going, pace is just a byproduct of the effort. And so we're working on pacing. So we find a pace that we can sustain for that prescribed period of time. And then we're going to find another pace that we can sustain for a shorter period of time, but it's at a higher pace. So ultimately, I'm trying to really get them to focus on effort and pacing rather than just that top end speed.
Mhm. Right.
So I
Yeah, and
just
I
I
think
don't find a whole lot of benefit in the top end speed for athletes that typically will do long course. I think that it's important to vary the pace throughout
Mhm.
a workout or have sessions where we are running at different paces. Because what I found is if you run the same pace all the time, you just get stale.
Mhm.
And the body kind of naturally will go to that pace, and you'll find it really, really hard to get faster or manage heart rate, because the more that you train the body at a particular pace, the body kind of senses what that heart rate is going to be during that structure, that workout. And when you start running, the heart rate goes immediately to that zone. And you'll find this with like new runners as well, and people that don't vary their pace. They'll say, hey, I got through my warm up, and my heart rate was okay, but then as soon as I got past the warm up, my heart rate spiked up to like 160, 170 beats a minute. And I said, well, the reason that it's doing that is because you've conditioned the body to expect that heart rate during your run. And so you don't have any of these like zone 1, zone 2, zone 3 heart rates. It just immediately goes there because it thinks that that's what it has to do in order to manage the effort that you're about to expend. It doesn't know that, hey, we're doing a progressive run, or something like that. We're trying to find these different zones and these different paces and different efforts. It doesn't know that. And so all it knows is that we're running now. This is the heart rate that I always have to provide in order to sustain these efforts. So I'm immediately going to go there. When I started implementing workouts where I ran at different efforts is where my body started to adjust, and I could get into these different zones. And you'll find it a lot with these new runners where they're reading on the internet, and it's like, okay, well, zone 2, zone 2, zone 2, I don't know how to get there because my heart rate immediately spikes as soon as I start running. And what they're saying is like, okay, well, that just means you have to slow down. Slow down, slow down, slow down. But that's not necessarily always the case.
Or
What it
that's not
means
always the
is that
best thing to do because
no, not
you're
at
now
all.
walking
Because
instead of
because
running.
eventually, that's all you're going to be
It's
doing
not
is
gonna
just
help you
walking.
be a runner, right? You're not gonna be able to
No.
get better. Yeah.
So I think that doing these speed sessions is valuable because I think it starts to train the body on what it needs to do during high efforts. So I think it's a valuable. I mean, the heart is a muscle just like anything else, just like
Right,
your
yeah.
quads and your biceps. I mean, so you have to train it,
Mhm.
and so but you
Yeah.
have to vary the stimulus. Otherwise, it's just going to go towards the central point of tendency,
Mhm.
so where it thinks that it has to go because that's where it's always gone.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I think, I mean, there's a lot of benefit to just different paces, not only for that, but just so you can know what it's gonna feel like to be like, if you're always zone 2, like, nobody runs a race. Nobody runs a race. I mean, maybe they do. Maybe people do, like, run a race, like, they're just running they're maybe new to it, and they don't, they're just trying to get the hang of running, and they might run their race in a zone 2, or if you're running a really long race, beyond a marathon, you're not trying to go as fast as you can, sure, but, like, for most people who are running a race that's, like, maybe even an Ironman, you would be maybe more in zone 2 because it's such a long race, but for someone doing even half Ironman or even slightly faster than that, like Olympic distance or sprint or, like, a marathon or faster, and you're really trying to get the best time you can, like, you're not gonna be doing that in zone 2. My race wasn't zone 2 the whole time,
No.
like, it wasn't. It was probably, like, zone 3. It was in that gray zone or even higher at some points, like, I was just pushing it the whole time, and so if you just do zone 2 all the time, you're not your heart rate, like you're saying, isn't your heart isn't gonna be used to it, and then also, like, you're just not going to know what that pace feels like, so it's not going to be easy for you if you just decide, well, I'm just gonna do zone 2 this whole time and never do any speed or intervals or fartlek or anything like that, and then I'm gonna try to do a race. It's not gonna go well because you just not used to trying to push yourself a little bit harder. So I think there's benefit too to just like doing different pace, like trying out different paces just for that reason alone. So you can kind of get used to what that feels like. So during a race, like, hey, this is going to be a little uncomfortable, but I know I can sustain it because I've done this in training and I've done these fartlek type workouts or these interval type workouts that kind of helped me learn that, first of all, even learn what this pace feels like and be able to like, get to that pace and be like, okay, like I'm here. You know what I mean? Like without looking at
Yeah.
your watch, which takes time. But so I definitely think like that's one benefit to it is just being able to I mean, the speed is a little different because unless you're running like in my case, I was doing like a mile race. So I've got to get used to like what it feels like to be running at that pace, which is fast, but maybe your goal isn't like you're like, well, I'm listening and I kind of want to try some speed. I'm just, I need a little break. Maybe you're a more seasoned athlete who can maybe handle a little bit of speed work or because I do definitely agree with Justin, and there's just some people who are just more prone to injury, or like it's just hard. Like they're just to go out to the track and do as fast as they can. The risk of that is just too high for certain people, and that's okay. That means that maybe you're not going to go try to do an all-out mile, or maybe even a 5K because that's just not an all-out 5K just because maybe that's just you tend to get injured with that, and maybe there's other things to work on there, like strength and form, running form, I don't know, but, like, until you feel like you can do that, I do think there's some risk for certain people,
I
but,
think
like,
genetics
yeah,
plays
well,
a
that's
role
probably
as
true.
well.
Yeah.
The composition of the body in terms of the slow twitch and fast twitch muscle fibers, that's genetics based. And so there are some people that just don't have the fast twitch
Well,
muscle
I don't have
fibers in their
fast
body
twitch
that will
muscle fibers,
sustain
though.
that can sustain and absorb speed work.
I don't
And
know because I'm like, don't think
these
I
are your
have that.
workhorses. These are the guys that can just like run all day. And because they've got these slow twitch
That's
muscle fibers
But that's
that
me,
just
and
can
I can
can
still do
hold up to it.
speed. I don't know, I must have more fast twitch that I thought I did because I can do, like, a mile in I don't know, it was, like, 5:26 or something was my time. It's pretty good for a 42-year-old. So I'm like, "You know what? Maybe I do. Maybe I don't maybe I have a better mix of them both," and I just always assumed I was an endurance person because that's what
Now
I
you
was
can you
told.
can convert you can convert a
You
slow
can,
twitch
yeah.
muscle fiber to a fast twitch muscle
I think
fiber,
so,
but it
yeah.
doesn't stay converted.
Yeah.
It will temporarily kind of like convert itself into fast
And
twitch, but then
we
it'll
all have
decondition and
some type
send to go
too.
back.
It's just the
Yeah.
percentage at which we have. I don't know, and I think along with that genetics, you're saying muscle fiber, but I mean, let's just face it, like body type, probably. I mean, I don't want to get into a conversation about what's optimal body type or something, but like, I think at some point, like if your body type is just like you're just maybe just built like a thicker bones or whatever, you just have a different body type that makes it harder to do speed, that's probably just gonna mean it's harder because now you're trying to carry your body as fast as you can for like, it's just gonna be a little bit harder on your bodies because
Mhm.
you're maybe have a little bit more weight that you're carrying versus someone that's light. I mean, sprinters, some of those men are, but they're very strong. You can see them some of them very strong, but they're also I mean, like Usain Bolt, I mean, he was also kind of lengthy. He's also taller and kind of he's strong but lean, so it's like a physique, but but they're doing that all out for 100 meter, like 100 meter, 200 meters. It's just a kind of a different type of athlete as well than, an endurance athlete, but I think there's a lot to it. Like there has to be something to be said of just muscle fiber type and body type, and being able to like carry yourself fast. But then, I just want to mention something too, and something I kind of came back to is I think if you're the type of person that's like, you know what, I just don't do well, I can't go to the track, it's too much of a risk. I do think speed work can still be helpful, but I just want to kind of outline what I would suggest and you can kind of tell me what you think about this. But, sometimes even doing the short strides is a lot because you are, even though they're 20 seconds, you're still asking yourself to go fast for that. I am a huge believer in doing like short hill sprints. And the reason is that yes, it's harder. You're not going to go as fast. Like you're not, but you're basically for maybe 8 to a max of 12 seconds or up maybe even to 20 seconds, but that's pretty almost too much. You're going up a hill, a pretty steep hill, as fast as you can go, and what that does is you're not like there's not as much of that pounding because when you're going uphill, you're striding up, but you're not like your foot isn't coming all the way down. There's just a little less
Right.
like stress on the body, but you're still getting a lot of the benefits that you would get. You obviously aren't going to be able to go as fast as you would on a track or on a flat surface, but there's a beauty to it because it also forces you to kind of have a little better mechanicals when you're like your body mechanics are going to be a little better when you're going uphill. So that is something that I've been building a lot into my own training outside of doing it now, but I did it a lot during my marathon training because I could do like anywhere between 4 and 8 of those during just a regular run and it wouldn't stress my body out too much and I was able to get some of that speed and strength because you're going uphill. So it's that, like you said, functional strength. So you're kind of getting
Mhm.
two things. So if you aren't like someone that's going to go to the track, which I don't think everybody should or needs to, but you want to sort of try to get some speed in, I would suggest something like that as an alternative because it's just going to be a lot less stress on your body. And you just need to keep it real short though. It's got to be short and fast and then allow yourself a full on recovery. Like you can walk down the hill
Mhm.
and then do it again. It's not like sometimes I'll do it and I'll jog real slow in between, but I'm allowing myself sometimes I'll jog all the way down and then allow myself like 3 or so minutes of just jogging real slow before I do another one. So it's not like I'm doing them like bam, bam, bam. It's truly like I want to do each one as fast as I can and make it quality. And I'll do, yeah, like I said, 4 to 8 of those maybe once, maybe twice a week. And that's just a suggestion I have for people who do want to try to incorporate some speed because I do think that could make you get some of the benefits of that without the risk. I don't know if you ever recommend that type of thing for your athletes or not, but that is one thing I personally suggest for people I work with or I've just kind of become a big proponent of because I've seen the benefits in my own training as well. So I don't know. That's that's from you?
Yeah, usually if I'm talking speed, I'm focusing on cadence and stride length.
Right. Yeah. I guess
When
so. Yeah.
when we talk about hill sprints, I typically will classify those as strength conditioning
Mhm.
runs, which is more
I
power
guess that's
driven.
true. It is more power, but
And
I think
so
you still see I think you could still see
yeah,
somewhat
ultimately
similar
you do see the
benefits. Yeah.
benefit of becoming a stronger runner through that functional strength because you're able to hold form longer. So the
Mhm.
degradation in your pace slows, so you don't slow down as fast during a run. So ultimately, you're able to sustain that pace rather than slow down, and so you do find that you can have faster race times or completion times without actually running faster. And it's because you just don't slow down as much. And this is a huge thing when it comes to endurance athletes and long course athletes. If we can find a way to become stronger so that we don't slow down as quickly or as soon, then that's a great way to observe faster race times. It's just we don't get slower.
Right. Yeah,
I do those types of workouts in my own plan as
Mhm.
well because I found that I can handle those a lot better than like cadence work, which is where I would say like
Speed work.
speed
Yeah.
sessions where I'm like running at a faster pace because I'm just trying to generate power. And so I'll vary the incline on the treadmill. I think the workout is like a 4, 5, 6, and it's 2 minutes at kind of like a 0.05, which is what would I would call like a zone two, and then I go 4 minutes at 4% or 2 minutes at 4% grade, 2 minutes at 5% grade, 2 minutes at 6% grade, and then 1 minute back down to point 0.5, and then I repeat that pattern. And so, that's
But
my kind of
that's like hill work.
yeah,
This isn't like
yes.
that speed that like taught like that going as fast as you can up a
No,
incline that I'm talking
those are the
about.
workouts that I typically would like. It's
Yeah.
what I call like hill repeats.
Right, because that's different to me, like, I like hill repeats for a different reason, but the sprints up the hill, I think, are really
So hill
important for,
sprint.
like
Okay.
and I think it actually does help with cadence because you're moving your legs pretty quickly to put yourself as fast as you can up that hill. It's truly like you're just like, you're if you ever watch someone do it or I mean, I've taken videos of myself maybe I'll do it again and just post it of myself doing this up a hill,
Mhm.
you'll see. My arms are like going like I'm sprinting and my legs are
Okay.
going very fast. But because it's uphill, there's not so much of that, like, when you're sprinting in that stride and you're just like, you can see people when they're sprinting, they're just leg is coming like, it's hard on the body 'cause you're putting so much
Mhm.
force to it, so it takes a little less of that burden off, so it's not like a hill repeat, like, I love that, I love hill repeats, I do, like, sometimes I have a really nice hill in front of my house that I use, but I'll do, like, 1 or 2-minute hill repeats outside, or sometimes if I have to use the treadmill, I'll do something similar where it's like a stepped hill thing where I'm just increasing, and then that's just the difficulty of it is the hill is increasing and therefore my heart rate is starting to go up, but, like, those are
But
great.
hold the pace steady. Don't
Yeah,
drop
no,
the
no, no,
pace
yeah, you
as
don't up
the
the
incline
pace, yeah,
grows.
and that's
Hold your
great, but
pace.
I'm talking, like, just as like, 8 to
Yeah.
12 seconds
Okay.
as fast as you can go up a pretty steep I mean, I can, like gosh, I don't know what the grade is, it's probably, like, 8%. It's pretty hot,
Mm.
a hot pace. I mean, I don't know, I guess I don't I maybe I could go out there and measure it somehow, but, it's, pretty steep right in front of my house, there's a really steep hill, and, I've just found that to be beneficial and way less it's hard on a day like, if I've done any strength work, my legs are sore. It's hard. It's much harder. Like, I don't know, because there is a strength component to it too. But that's what I would suggest. Or if you're able to do strides, because you are then doing like building in a little bit of that speed work. Another thing I do sometimes that might be work for people is like I might go on a run and I have, how power poles are set like
Uh-huh.
really like maybe at most 100 meters apart. They're set differently. But I'll do
Yeah.
a workout where I'll do, like, as fast as I can go between 2 power pole, like a fartlek, but it's speed,
Yeah.
and then I'll go really, really slow, and then fast as I can go, and it's just fun, it's different, but I don't do a ton of them. It's just, like, 4 or 5 of that, just real fast, and then maybe walk or just a really easy pace in between. So it's just, like, finding but you're not doing a ton of them, and they're really, really short. So it's not even like a track where you go to the track and you do like 400 repeats or 200 repeats. That's a longer speed session. I think if you can just inject a little bit of speed and, enough that it's help, I think that in that case, maybe doing that once or twice a week, like the hill sprints or the little strides, I think that's enough to get the benefit of it without having to actually do a whole bunch of speed work. Um, like, what I'm doing right now is a little different. I'm just refocusing on speed because I have the ability to. I know I have the mechanics to be able to do the speed, but my mileage is also much less right now. Like, when I was training for my
Yeah.
marathon, I wouldn't have been able to do this and do 70 miles a week. I'm doing maybe 40, 45 too. So, but there's a couple things here. Like, what this is doing for me is probably first and foremost is, like, allowing myself a break. Like, I think this is something too I mean, whatever you decide to do, it doesn't have to be speed work. It could be just focusing on strength, like going to the gym and working on strength or something different. But I do think, like, after that marathon training cycle, and it was a long one, I was burnt out. And if I was like, "No, I'm gonna try again," this fall I'm going to run another marathon. I just don't think it would have gone very well. I think I would have either ended up injured or I'd be right now, just like totally burnt out and tired and exhausted
Mhm.
and like unhappy, with my training. Because as much as I love the process and I love the grind of marathon training, it is a grind and it is a process and it takes a lot. And it also like takes a lot, like my sacrifice and things from my family for the time. So it's like, now I'm giving myself this break. I'm doing something fresh. I'm doing something different. It's like fun because it's different and I kind of like going fast, honestly. Like I feel like I'm going fast and I'm sure if like a real track athlete was next to me, I'd be going slow, but it's exhilarating. It's like this is fun, And so it's just giving me and just injecting this like new and different I'm still running and I'm still doing some long runs. Like I think I did 16 miles the other day. I'm not just doing speed, but I'm injecting like at least 1 or 2 days a week where I'm kind of focusing or I had been focusing on track work or just speed. And I've been able to lessen my mileage and focus more on that. And it's allowed me to I feel like I'm getting faster and it's fun, it's different. And now when I go back to marathon training, I'm gonna focus. We'll talk about some I think our next topic will be kind of more of like periodized training and how to, seasons of training. But I'll go back to some strength and then, base building, and then I'll go into another marathon build. But I'm going to go into that build stronger, and my top end speed will be a little bit better. And whether or not that helps with marathons, I mean, I think there's some indication it might. But at the very least, I've just done something different, and my training has given me new light so that when I go into that marathon build, I'm going to be ready for it and happy and excited and ready to do the grind again. And maybe I will be a little bit faster for it, or my mechanics, maybe I'll have better running mechanics or running efficiency because I did this speed, and there's some indication that might be true. But I think for me, it's just like, I'm going to be excited to get back to marathon training because I took a little break and did something different. Right? And I think that's probably the biggest thing for me, so we could argue or not argue, but we could talk all about all the benefits of why speed work is good for marathons or triathletes. And maybe it is, and there's a couple things it could be good for, but as you're mentioning, there is a lot of risks too for some people. So, at the very least, like I think my biggest thing I wanted to just talk about here, one of the things I wanted to mention was this whole, it's so nice to just take a break and do something
Yeah.
a little bit different. Whether it's you're always doing Ironmans, why not try it? Like, yeah, do a few sprints, like if you haven't done that in a while, or I don't know, like one year I did like a Spartan race, it was like totally out of my wheelhouse. I was like in 2017. I did a whole bunch of stuff that year. I kind of went crazy, but I was like, I'm gonna do a Spartan race, and I trained for this like obstacle course race. And I had no idea what I was doing, and it was a blast. I kind of came away like I didn't do it I wanted, but I would do another one if I could train for it. It was so much fun. So it's like stuff like that, just find something new, different. And like then when you go back to your Ironman or when you go back to your marathon training, you're going to like be so much more excited to be there because you were able to sort of switch gears for a little while. So anyway,
I
that's my
I wholeheartedly agree with that because I mean, when I finished my last triathlon I did Ironman North Carolina 70.3. Let's see, when was that? That was in 2021. It was an absolute dumpster fire, and I think I've talked about this on another episode. But after that race is when I had my shoulder surgery to repair because I did that race with a torn bicep tendon and a torn rotator cuff. It was a nightmare. And so then I sat down and had my surgery, and then I had another surgery on my other arm like a year later, and it turned into a 4-year hiatus from the sport. And I was all bought into Ironman. I was all into it, into the triathlon. I've been doing it for like over 10 years. Absolutely. I love the sport. It's a huge part of who I am. And that forced hiatus really caused me to reevaluate how I identify myself. It's like, yes, I'm a triathlete, but I've been forced to really say, well, that's not all I am. And so as I was recovering from those surgeries, I had to find something else to do. So you can either voluntarily find something to do, or you can find yourself in a situation like I was in where I was forced to find something else to do. And I mean, I don't wish it on anybody, to say the least. But quite honestly, it was probably one of the best things that's happened in my endurance journey was the forced break that I had to take. And I ended up focusing on, endurance hikes, and I was doing it like the Mammoth March. And we've talked about that before. And it really kind of forced me to kind of go back to the drawing board and go back to my roots of, trying to create a better foundation, a more solid foundation. And the foundation of running is walking. And so I think that it was a valuable experience and one that I'm glad I kind of had to go through. Because when I found myself this year being able to compete, I almost felt honored to be able to get back on to the race course and try this again. My passion for the sport reignited because I thought for a long time, it's like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this again, because there were, basically I couldn't lift one of my arms over my head, which is basically
Gotta be able to swim.
A death wish or a death sentence for a swimmer,
Right.
so and it's going to affect your arm swing for running, and so it really kind of like flows into all the disciplines, and it's like, what am I going to do, what can I do, this is kind of like how I've identified myself over the years, and I really kind of had to reevaluate who I was, and I came back this year, and I'm having a fantastic year. I'm about to start training for Ironman Florida 70.3, which was definitely not in the plan and not in the cards, but I was blessed to be able to do it. And
And I bet because of that break and all of the stuff, you're
and
just
and it's
it
all
makes you
because of
more
the break and
thankful.
my
Yeah.
my passion for how I feel today, and the gratitude that I have for coming up to the starting line. I've never had this level of gratitude in my entire, I don't want to say career, but in my entire journey, I've never felt the gratitude and the humbleness that I feel today because of what I've had to go through and the road that I've had to take to come back. And I think that, if people find themselves kind of like burnt and they're just like, this is no longer, it's becoming more of a job. And now you're starting to be concerned. It's like, okay, well, if I don't do this, what are people going to say? What are people going to think? Honestly, I just got to the point where I just said, I just really just don't care.
Yeah, I think
I
that
mean,
I wonder how many people are out there that they're just going through it and they're not like it's like I got to do this run and but I got to do it cuz I have like or maybe oh, if I don't do this it's not going to show up on Strava my goals or I don't know whatever it is and you're just
yeah,
doing it because there's some external thing that's causing you to be like that's motivating you but internally you're just kind of like I'm so burnt out I think it's okay to take a step back. It doesn't mean you don't do it. It doesn't mean you give up. I don't think it means, like in your case, you didn't just like give up and say, okay, I'm not going to be able to do this anymore. You just sort of switched gears and you did the rucking for a bit, which I think is also a great way to sort of stay in shape for anyone who can't maybe run or has some injury issues but can still kind of walk. Or do maybe they have upper body something going on with their like you did like a surgery or something and they can still kind of walk but maybe not run. Like there's always something I think. I mean, for the most part, I'm sure if somebody could think of some scenario or something, I'm sure, but it's like for the most part, there's always something you can do and I think to let that external thing be driving you and you're just doing it because you're worried about what your friends will think or what, oh, my Strava won't show that I did this many miles. I have to do 60 miles at least or something like that. Like or whatever it is, I think that's a problem. And I think to recognize that and be like, okay, I'm going to do something different. Let's infuse something different, try something new. And you're still doing something. I think you might find that it does help you refocus and invigorate you. And when you are, if it's an injury that's slowing you down or just burnout, by switching gears a little bit and trying something different. I mean, the Spartan, but I also remember doing like when I was doing triathlon, that was for me because I'd always been a runner, adding in the triathlon piece and the bike and the swim because those were both sort of out of my element was really fun, like I liked it at the time. It was great and that added it was different than running and it kind of kept me going and that's probably why that and just the little other things I've done throughout the last 30 years or so, and taking some legitimate breaks from running. I haven't been running continuously this long. There's been times where I've had like a year or two where I hadn't really been able to run just because of burnout or whatever. So, but allowing yourself to take a break and do something different, whether it's speed work or rucking or Spartan, I don't know, Spartan, give it a shot. It's cool.
yeah,
Try something different and yeah, I think what you'll find is when you come back to it, because if it's something you're really passionate about, like you really want to do more Ironmans or you want to really try to get your best time in a marathon or something, like you'll get back to it. But I guarantee you'll be back to it and you'll be more invigorated than ever to do it. So, and more, ready to get into the training again. And so I think, at least for me, this is the biggest piece of this little speed break. It's like, yeah, I mean, I do truly believe too that it will make me faster at my marathon, but I don't know how much. I mean, it's probably not going to be the magnitude of like minutes. It's probably not going to be 5 minutes. It's probably going to make me faster by like maybe a few seconds a mile at the most. So we're talking I guess that could be almost a minute or so, but, it could be enough, to get my PR, so we're not talking this is gonna be like a complete game changer, but I think you also have to think of it from my perspective, it's just mostly this, like, little break that I needed, but yeah, I think I don't
I
know.
mean, even if it's just a mental reset,
Yeah.
you know? I mean,
Or maybe
focusing
you just
on
need to take time as a
yeah,
complete break, like, maybe
yeah.
you do need to just some people just need, like, a break, whether that's, like, a month or whatever that is to just take a time and put it, like, okay, like, and that's okay too. I think that's okay too, so but yeah, you're right, it's that reset. Yeah,
Yeah, because
I don't know.
you never can anticipate all of the potential benefits that you'll get by focusing on something different. For
Mhm.
instance, this year I bought a gravel bike. I've never ever been interested in trail stuff. I've always just been a road biker. I always said that I don't do dirt. So that's why I've always like found myself on the roads. I didn't like running trails. I didn't like, biking on trails or anything like that. And so when I found myself kind of thinking about adding that aspect to my training plan, I said, well, if I don't like it, I don't like it. I can always just sell the bike and, go back to what I do. But I liked having the variety that now I could pick. It's like, okay, well, do I feel like riding on the road today? No, I don't feel like dealing with traffic. No, so let's just grab the other bike and I'm going to go hit the trails where maybe I feel a little bit more safe and secure and I don't have to worry
Yeah,
about cars. Little did I know that it's still just not there's still risk involved, if you're riding over roots and gravel and everything else and the bike starts swerving under you. It's just a different risk
different
component,
risk.
but I'd never really considered the benefits that I would gain from gravel biking in terms of my triathlon fitness. It's a different style of riding. So it's not like, completely transparent and a one for one. But I will say that the more time that I've spent on the gravel bike, I'm now a much stronger cyclist. I'm been working on cadence and power. And, I find that I'm able to climb hills easier. So even if my speed isn't higher or my power isn't higher, I can finish the hill without feeling completely exhausted and gassed. And to me,
Mhm.
that's a huge benefit. And I never would have considered, how just switching to a different bike and a different method of training has going to bleed over into like my primary sport.
Yeah, I
And
think you
so,
can always you can read about how it might, and you might but you don't
yeah,
I don't think you go
but you
into
never
that
know until you
expecting it.
do it.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think you should do something specific like speed work just because I said, "Oh, it's gonna help you with it," because if you don't like it or something, but, in your case, you're like, "Hey, I'm gonna try this gravel bike because, yeah, it's a little maybe potentially I'm not gonna get hit by a car. I could eat it and totally wreck and get bloodied and all that, maybe break something, but at least I would argue that's better than getting hit by a car or something, but then you're doing it, and maybe it's nicer to be on the trails. I mean, personally, I don't like being out where there's lots of traffic just because of the noise. So if I were gonna bike again, I would probably get a gravel bike just for the fact that it's a little quieter and you're out in nature more and stuff like that. So there's those benefits, and then you're doing it and you're realizing that you're having these other benefits. I would even think like on a gravel bike, you gotta maneuver like it almost probably helps with your bike handling skills too because
Absolutely, yeah.
it's a lot more like, because you're on such loose gravel
Mhm.
sometimes. You're needing to, like, be able to handle the bike better. There's probably all these benefits you get, but the reason you did it initially wasn't necessarily for those benefits, and that's kind of like the speed. I it's kind of the sa like, I know that there's benefits, and I'm hoping it helps me with my marathon, but I'm not doing it necessarily for that. It's more because I just needed a break. I needed something different,
Yeah.
and I like it. It's fun. It's a little something. In fact, I'm almost like, maybe I'll just focus on this, trying to get faster and as fast as I can get, and then just kind of forego the marathon. I don't know. No, I don't know if I'll do that. I just think I'm
Yeah,
not quite ready to get back to that tells
right.
me right there that I'm even thinking like that I'm not yet ready to start training. I have to, like, wait until that fire builds and I'm like, "Okay, I am ready I need to do this again," and then I'll sign up. I'll do it, but
Yeah.
that tells me right there that I'm even thinking that, I'm not ready for my marathon just quite yet.
I think it's valuable that when you were telling me that, hey, I'm thinking about like focusing on some shorter stuff. Sometimes when long course athletes will say, hey, I'm taking I'm going to go back to shorter races, they kind of discount it, where it's like
Yeah.
they don't think of it as great of an achievement. And I know that this is, I'll speak for myself
Mhm.
when, when I
Triathlete.
said, hey, I started doing Ironman. I was doing like full Ironman, and then I would register for a 70.3, and people would ask me, it's like, hey, what race are you doing? We're training for, and I was like, oh, I'm training for this race, but it's only a 70.3. And it's like you're discounting the effort and the accomplishment before you even do it. And so I think it's easy, like if we find ourselves like progressing in longer and longer races, this shift backwards, you almost kind of think of it as like you're regressing. You're not progressing, you're not moving forward. But I would argue that it is a progression. You're still progressing. It's just the distance that you're covering may not be as long, or the time that you're investing in is not as long. So,
Mhm.
you find that you're going to have to train with some higher intensity, so now you're stronger, and ultimately you'll be faster, and that will ultimately bleed into, if you decide to go back to longer races, I think ultimately it helps. But I don't think that we should go into it, and I don't think that you did this when you said,
No,
hey, I'm going to
'cause
go back.
but
I'm going
running
to go
is
back. It's like
different.
you
It's
didn't
not
do it.
like
It's like,
triathlon.
hey, I want to increase my marathon time, by 10%. So I'm going to go and I'm going to do short course mile races with the expectation that I'm going to improve my marathon time by 10%.
Mhm.
I don't think that you did it that way.
No, and I think it's different for running because for runners, yes, there's a lot of people are like, "Oh, the marathon is great," but I think there's also a lot of respect for people who wanna do a really fast 5K. You know what I mean? Like, that's because we all know as runners, like, the 5K sucks. It's hard. It doesn't suck, it's just hard. It's hard for 3 you're just dying for 3 miles, but a marathon, so it's like, yeah, there is that a little bit, like, "Oh, you're doing a marathon," and that, but I think there's also still respect for someone who wants to do like a fast 5K, or there isn't that sort of like, oh, we're downgrading. You're not good. It's not the same there. But in triathlon, and this I'm speaking because I do have experience with triathlon, and I did feel that way, like this pressure. It was almost like, oh, I did a half Ironman. Oh, when are you going to do an Ironman? Well, I don't know. Like maybe never because I'm not sure I want. And it's like almost like if I don't do the Ironman, I've never accomplished anything as a triathlete. And I think that's probably a problem with triathlon, and that sort of like pressure for people like, oh, well, you got to be like an Ironman. Otherwise, you're not really a triathlete or something. That's kind of my impression of it. At least my experience with it was like, oh, well, when are you going to, like, oh, you've only done a half Ironman? Like, okay. That is problematic, I think, in its own, because people do have this like pressure to like then stay and do Ironmans, and like, oh, well, yeah, if they do a sprint, it's just, it seems like that's more so in that in the from my experience with triathletes and triathlon is like there isn't as much prestige. And even though Olympic is like the Olympic distance is what's in the Olympics, like then that's a good distance. It's a perfectly great distance and it's fun and it's short enough that you can be fast, but I don't know. I think it's a great distance, but it's like for some reason there's this like pressure to do an Ironman. And then if you do go back, I think there is this like, oh, well, why are you doing that? Like, so maybe it's a different for triathletes. And I do think it's important. You just got to do like that coming back to that external motivation. Like if you're only doing the Ironman because you feel that pressure, like, "Oh, well, I'm not truly a triathlete unless I've done this Ironman distance race," but you're not really wanting, you're just doing it for that reason. That's not gonna, or you're continuing to do them for that reason. I think that's not a good reason to do it. Like, if you love triathlons but you just don't want to continue, want to do something faster, I think it's perfectly okay, great to do an Olympic distance or a sprint. And there's still a lot of achievement in there because you have to do all three of those events as fast as you can possibly go. That's not easy. I mean, assuming you're going as fast as you're going fast and you're doing it for speed, like there's nothing easy about doing that, like as fast as you can go, 'cause a sprint, what, takes, like, about an hour and a half? I don't know, but it's still a lot. I
Mhm.
don't know, just, like, don't discount that. There's something hard. I mean, I've done some sprints, and I'm like, "Gosh, this is hard." And then you have to do a 5K on top of already swimming and biking. It's hard, you know? So, I don't know. Like, it just I think letting go of that and being like, "Yeah, I'm gonna focus on this." It doesn't mean you don't go back to an Ironman or for me, like, a marathon eventually, but it's okay. I'm giving you permission to do it, and don't let that external, like, stuff, like, dictate what you're going to be doing. And I think if you like we're saying, if you take a break and do something different, like some sprint, some faster stuff, or like a different mode of a bike, gravel bike, which is I think great, or maybe you're like, I'm gonna just do something fun and do like a obstacle course race or something different. You might actually find that what you gain out of that training gives you, even more speed or endurance or some sort of component that helps you be better at that race that you're ultimately wanting
Yeah.
to get better at, which might be the Ironman or whatever it is, like an ultra distance of some sort. It's giving you something. I guarantee you're going to get something out of it, even if it's not like faster. It's just something you've learned about yourself. So I think that's important. Otherwise, we're just sort of stagnating a little bit, like just doing the same thing over and over and over again. There's some benefit, I think, to that if you love it and you just love to do that and that's your thing and you're not burning out and you're like, you just love the grind of it and there isn't any issue there. But I think if you're starting to experience some of that, or like me, you've had this really long marathon build of like 10 months and you just need a break, like it's okay to take that break and do something different. And you might learn a little something about yourself or even be faster in the end because of it. So I don't know. That's all. I think I said what I want to say. I don't know.
I
I'm
will
a
I
drama
will say that
there.
that even though I don't really classify myself as a runner, I will say that I have felt the pressure that, if I don't do a marathon, I'm not considered a
Oh,
runner. So I
I don't
think
think that's
maybe
true.
it's like I don't know, like your perception in terms of like,
Perception,
do
yeah.
you identify yourself as a runner or a triathlete? If you identify yourself as a triathlete, then maybe I've never felt the pressure to do a full Ironman.
Oh,
I just
really?
wanted to do it because I wanted to pressure myself, but I
Different
never felt like
perception, yeah.
outside pressure. I did have people tell me, I had one guy tell me, he's like, "Oh, you did an Ironman? It must be it must be more mental than it is physical because I'm a bigger guy." And he's like, "You don't look like the kind of person that would be able to do that." And that
Huh,
just kind of stuck with me. That kind of, but and I've had people say, hey, Iron Man isn't for everybody. So,
right.
you know,
Okay, this is when I was living in Boulder,
yeah, it kind of fueled me
Colorado.
a
Do you
little
know
bit.
do you know
So
that's like the capital of I think it was just perception. It's like who you're around because it was like
that could have a
when you're
huge role.
for a long time, I was around training, doing my master's swim workouts with Olympic, like with like pro level athletes
Yeah,
because it's
that makes sense.
Boulder, Colorado. So I think that's probably just like, it's not that there aren't like really good triathletes all over and where you like, it's just that's like a big mecca. And I was surrounded by these people who were spending all day long training and stuff. And I'm like, well, I guess that's what I mean? It's just, like, the
Yeah.
perception of it. It's like what my experience was is probably not the same as everyone else, but it was interesting. I mean, I'm not gonna say it was a bad experience to be around these, like, great athletes. I think it just made me feel, like, lesser than a little bit sometimes, even
Mm,
though I'm a good athlete or, like, "Oh, maybe, like, all these people training for I wanna qualify for Kona, and this is, like, this huge thing in this area where I was." Like, "Oh, maybe I should." Well, that sounds like a big achievement. It's like this huge thing, right? This is like everyone that is around that I'm around is kind of wanting to do this thing. And I'm like, "Oh, well, I'm just kind of doing this other thing and I'm more of a runner." And it just seemed like my perception and they could have for sure not even thought that, right? It's just the way I
yeah.
perceived it. So it's true. I'm not I think there's other people I've run into that have experienced similar to me, but I think it's just because of where I was at the time. And it could be totally different if I got back into it now where I live now in Fort Collins. So yeah, it's probably worth saying. Yeah.
Well, what
I
are
know
we
we're
at
gonna
for recording time? My computer is
I
like
know it's
way.
about an hour. We're over an hour, so we probably ought to
All
like
right, so let's wrap
shut
this
it
thing
down.
up. We
I think we
we
talked enough
start
about we
we
sort of got into
started.
speed and then it went into some other
I know
realm, and
it.
that's okay. It's like
So
We
Yeah.
might have to change the title. I don't know. We'll have to talk about that for the
That's
actual
exactly what I was just about to
episode.
say. It's like we introduced this episode as like a speed episode, but it kind of like morphed
Morphed.
itself into like, mental resets and finding other stuff. And so that's what I think I love about like these coaches' corners
Yeah.
where, the conversation just kind of flows the way that it flows. There's really like none of us had notes for this. We just kind of like had a general idea on what we wanted to talk about and just let the conversation flow. So we can't guarantee that the title that you're going to see
Or the
ultimately
title you're gonna
has
hear in the
speed
beginning.
word in it at all. So
Yeah.
we'll potentially rename this, but we hope that you have enjoyed this episode of the Coach's Corner for the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast. I'm your host, Coach Justin. Well, we'll do our wrap ups here. The Endurance Athlete, if you would kindly leave us a review on whatever platform that you are listening to podcasts, whether that be Spotify, iTunes, or what have you, we would greatly appreciate it. We'd love the feedback on what you think of the content that we're coming out with and the conversations that we have. It's kind of like a little bit of a report card for us, and I'm anxious to kind of see what you guys think. So if you could please go ahead and just leave us a review, and some comments would be nice so that we have some context with the stars. That would be fantastic. Again, we have the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast group on Facebook. It's the private group. So there's the public page of the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast, but then we have one that is just a dedicated group where you can come in and see additional content. You can pose questions to us individually, suggest topics for future episodes, but just going in and just answer the one question, and we'll let you right on in trying to build a community of listeners and just trying to all support each other and learn from each other. I know that both of us have spaces on our rosters, and so I think both of us are actively taking on athletes. So if you are interested in working with Katie with a run plan or dietitian, some work on your diet, you can go to fuel2 and run.com and you can reach out to her. If you are interested in talking to me about whether it be triathlon or single sport training and coaching, you can go to tabularasaracing.com and send me a message. We also have a email address for the podcast as a whole. Is it the Endurance Athlete Journey at gmail.com?
Yeah, I
can't
believe
quite
it is.
remember.
The
I
Endurance
should just write this
Athlete.
down and just have it
I
on my
know.
desk so that I
It's,
know what it is.
the Endurance Athlete Journey at gmail.com. I think
So
I
it does have
messed
the
it
word
up.
"the" in it. So it's
The
the Endurance
Endurance.
Athlete
Yeah.
Journey at gmail.com. You can send us a message. Or if you're listening to this on YouTube, it's going to be printed in the credits at the end of the video. So again, thank you guys so much for listening. This was the Coach's Corner, episode 4, title to be forthcoming. So we'll figure it out.
Might change it out. It's
But
okay.
thank you guys for listening, and we will talk to you again next time. See you, Katie.
Bye.
Listening to the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast. Like and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube. Feel free to leave us up to a 5-star review on iTunes and Spotify, because leaving a review really helps others like you find us. Visit the podcast website for other episodes of the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast at enduranceathletejourney.buzzsprout.com. Have questions or comments about the podcast? Send Coach Justin and Kate an email at theenduranceathletejourney@gmail.com. For all things coaching, visit Coach Katie at fuel2run.com and Coach Justin at tabularasaracing.com. Again, thank you for listening to the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast, and remember to find joy in the journey.